You know, I almost went to see this in the theater, just spontaneously. It played right after 2 other movies I'd gone to see, so it would have been perfect. But then I realized it was pretty late and I'd be home well after midnight, so I didn't. But I wish I had, because this was a pretty fun and entertaining movie. And it's one of these movies I hadn't really heard anything about. I hadn't even heard any opinions on it, if people thought it was good or not. And based on just how few reviews it has on IMDb, I don't think a lot of people actually went to see it. But something made me want to see it, so I did, and as I said, I'm glad I did. Because from the very first scene it just put a smile on my face. It's one of these rare movies that just immediately puts me in a good mood. And it's a stop-motion animation from the production company called Laika, who have made movies like Coraline, Kubo and the Two Strings and Paranorman. And the writer-director Chris Butler has worked on at least the last 2 of those. And I gotta say, what studios like this are doing with stop-motion these days is pretty incredible. I mean, I grew up in the 90s when stop-motion was pretty crude in comparison. And I never really liked it, probably exactly because of how crude it was. But what they're doing now with movies like this, Anomalisa and Isle of Dogs is pretty incredible. And I do know they use some CGI too, but most of this movie at least isn't. But it's so incredibly smooth and detailed, I actually thought this was CGI, made to look like stop motion. But then in the end credits they actually show how they did it. And I looked it up on YouTube as well, and yeah, my mind is blown. The craft and care that goes into these things is just out of this world. But enough gushing over the behind the scenes technical stuff. What's the movie actually about? Well, it's about this explorer, adventurer guy, voiced by Hugh Jackman, and he's a bit of a renegade. An outsider, but he wants to be accepted by the adventurer community. And he thinks he's finally found a way to do that, so he sets out on a journey to discover Bigfoot. But that story takes a bit of an interesting turn, and what unfolds is quite an unexpected adventure. One that's, as I said, fun and entertaining, and I would even go as far as to calling this movie delightful. Now, I wouldn't exactly call it deep or profound, and the story itself isn't exactly the greatest thing I've ever seen. But it works, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, so I can't exactly complain. And a lot of that probably had to do with the humor as well, because I got quite a few laughs out of this, way more than I expected. And it's one of these movies that I think should work for kids as well as adults. Like, there are quite a few jokes in this that probably fly right over most kids' heads. But even the sillier stuff is just fun, you know, lighthearted but not too simplistic. It usually doesn't go for the easiest jokes, they're often a little bit more clever than that. And when it does go for that really base kind of humor, it usually delivers it in a way that still made me laugh. So kudos to the whole voice acting crew too, especially Hugh Jackman and Zach Galifianakis. They did a really good job here and played off of each other so well too. And yeah, overall this thing just hit the right spot for me. It was exactly what I needed, and as I said, I found it to be quite delightful actually. But at the same time I could also appreciate the craft that went into making this. So it's just a well-rounded, fun family movie with something for the kids and the adults. But I mean, if I had to criticize something about it, it would probably be the story. Not because it's bad, but because it's just not on the level of the great Pixar movies, which just set the bar so high it's almost impossible to reach. And as this movie proves, if you do everything else well enough, you don't really need to reach that high, as long as you do a decent job. But yeah, would I recommend this thing? Absolutely, go watch it. Or don't. After all, I'm not your dad. But hey, what are your thoughts on this? Have you seen it? Did you like it? Let me know. And if you enjoyed the video, maybe give it a thumbs up or sub to the channel, because that would be fantastic. And if you'd like, you can also support me on Patreon or PayPal through the links in the description. And as always, I appreciate you and thanks for watching.